Let me tell you something. If I ever meet the inventor of the franchise tag, it's on site. They take so much fun away from us, man. Ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals, dudes and dames, welcome back to another episode of the Sports Seriously NFL podcast, part of the Sports Seriously Network, proudly presented to you by USA Today. As always, I am your party host, Joe Rivera, and along with me, two of the preeminent bald knowers at USA Today Sports, Jacob Camenker and Ayrton Ostly. Guys, Jacob, let's start with you. How you feeling, man? Give me something quick. How you feeling ahead of free agency?
I'm feeling excited. I don't really know how this is going to pan out. We've seen in other years where you look at some of the free agents and you're like, oh, he'd be a perfect fit here. Oh, this guy has connections to this staff. That makes a lot of sense. But given the state of cap space around the league and the guys who are available, there aren't a lot of fits that you look at and you're like, yeah, this is a slam dunk. This is absolutely going to happen. So I feel like this could be pretty unpredictable. The quarterback market's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk more about that. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting time as we kind of see how things are going to shake out ahead of the upcoming season.
And Ayrton, let me tell you, we're entering the Ostly off season. We're entering Ostly season, man. And you were at the combine, Ayrton. You had your eyes on the combine. What's your, before we get into free agency, what's your biggest takeaway from the combine this year?
Man, that there is once again more every single year. It feels like there's more and more wide receivers that just come in. The young talent is going to be really fun. And this draft is pretty exciting, but I don't think it'll affect free agency as much as prior years. So I think the strengths of the free agency class don't necessarily align with the strengths of the draft class. So you may see teams take a little bit more risk.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. And speaking of risk, Jacob, let's go here to start this off, man. You touched on the quarterback class. So I'm going to start there because, as we know, most important position in sports. Number one quarterback that everybody's got their eye on, not quite sure where he's going to be landing, is Malik Willis, free agent. After spending a season with the Packers, started his career with the Titans, didn't really get anything going there. What do you think? What's the deal with Malik Willis? What's your projection here?
Yeah, so I think Willis is one of those guys that you look at and you say, man, if I could just take a swing on a quarterback on a short-term deal that's kind of mid-tier value, a lot of teams will be interested because, look, he doesn't have a big sample size of starting experience. Across his 4 years, he's made 6 starts. That includes 3 the last couple of years with the Green Bay Packers. But when you watch him play, he has excellent accuracy and elite level mobility. These are the traits that showed up when he was at Liberty. And, it took him some time maybe to develop at the NFL level, but the Packers seem to get the most out of him. During his time with the Packers, he's completed 78.7% of his passes for 972 yards and 6 touchdowns. Most impressively, no interceptions. So a guy who can really run the ball, throw the ball accurately, and avoid turnovers, that's going to appeal to a lot of NFL teams. The question is just how much are they going to be willing to pay him because of that small sample size? I still expect the team to splurge on him. I think you look at teams like the Arizona Cardinals and Miami Dolphins, whose new coach and general manager combination come over from the Packers and are very familiar with Willis. I look at those teams and say, hey, they need some young upside at quarterback. It's not a very good quarterback draft class outside of Fernando Mendoza. So if you could give Willis maybe a Justin Fields type contract where it's 2 years, $40 million in total. I know you're shaking your head, Joe, because your Jets are the ones that paid up for Justin Fields. But I think Malik Willis getting that type of deal, or if there's a bidding war, maybe somewhere more in the 3-year, $75 million deal that was one of Geno Smith's original extensions with the Seahawks. I think that's what makes sense for Willis. But I expect there to be a lot of interest in him because in a year where there aren't a ton of great young quarterbacks out there, he represents kind of that upside swing you're looking for.
Kyler Murray is a guy that's going to be playing for a different team in the coming weeks. We know, I'm going to throw it back here, but we know when the contract extension talks with the Cardinals, he had that homework clause in there, and there were some questions about how devoted he was to film study, and it just never felt right with Kyler between, you spent this season injured, you were hoping that Jonathan Gannon would get something out of there. Now Gannon's gone, Mike LaFleur is in. I don't know with Murray, man. I just don't know. Like, you see the talent, the size has always been a question. I saw Bomani Jones, excellent. If I could plug Bomani for a second, but he made a point, like, people are comparing Kyler Murray's situation to Sam Darnold. But to be fair, Kyler Murray has never been where Sam Darnold was, right? Like people think he's this major reclamation project. I don't think he's that. It's just a question of finding the right scheme, the right system to get him to work. I don't know who has that at the moment, right? Because you would have maybe said the Raiders before the season, and the Raiders would have made sense if they didn't land the number one overall pick. You maybe would have said the Dolphins before the season, but the Dolphins are probably going to be players with from Malik Willis after hearing Jeff Hafley and John Eric Sullivan talk about him. To your point, Jacob, the Jets, I mean, are the Jets in a situation where they could look at Kyler Murray and take a flyer on this guy? I don't know. I don't think it makes a ton of sense, but what are your options here? You're going to be looking at a Jacoby Brissett potentially. You're going to swing a trade for a guy. I don't know. Andy Dalton's a name that's been thrown out there. So it's just weird looking at Murray's situation and saying, who are the landing spots here? Where could he potentially go? So all of that being said, long-winded response from me, Jacob. If you had to make a prediction today, I got you in a hammerlock. I got you in a chicken wing, and I say, give me Kyler Murray's landing spot for the 2026 season. Who do you think it is?
So, Joe, I do think it's the New York Jets, and the reason for this is pretty simple. Aaron Glenn is going to be coaching for his job this upcoming season. He needs a quarterback who has both experience and upside. Kyler Murray will provide that. And given that the Jets aren't likely to land a quarterback with the number 2 overall pick, you can maybe convince me that Ty Simpson at 16 could make a lot of sense for them. I like him a lot as a prospect. But I think you go and get Kyler Murray. You say, hey, if this guy lives up to his ceiling, he could be a big upgrade for us. And then we'll draft a guy in the middle rounds that we can develop and say, hey, we'll throw him in if Kyler doesn't pan out. I know it probably feels similar to the Justin Fields move from last offseason, which will turn off a lot of Jets fans, but I do think there's more upside with Murray just because his arm talent and passing ability is better than what Fields has shown throughout his career. So I think the Jets are the team that I would look at as maybe the best fit for him.
And Ayrton, I'm going to ask you the same question. I got you in a chicken wing. Where do you think Murray ends up in 2026? What's your prediction?
I'd say I feel like New York is the easy answer, so I'm not going to go with that. I'll throw a little curveball in here. Why not Cleveland? Let's see something a little bit different. There's some proof of concept there. Kevin Stefanski's gone. Todd Monken is there. Give him a chance with a veteran quarterback that there's proof of concept with Kyler.
I like that. I like that a lot, Ayrton, because, for me, it's like you look at the head coach wants to put his stamp on the football team, right? He wants to put we hear this all the time, his brand of football. And we know Monken's a guy. He wants to go bombs away. He wants to be explosive. And Kyler Murray, if nothing else, he is an explosive player, right? He can make plays outside the pocket. That quarterback room, listen, Shador is going to get his shot to stick somewhere, if not Cleveland, just because he's Shador, right? Like just on reputation alone. I'm not sure what you would grade him this year for his performance. I mean, the whole situation wasn't great, but he'll get his shot. Deshaun Watson is there, but do you believe in Deshaun at this point in his career, having not played in a long time? And when he did play, he didn't look good at all. So I like that, Ayrton. I think that's a pretty fun pick. But before we move on, one last quarterback, Jacob, a guy that said it would be, quote, dope to find a new home for the 2026 season, and that's Tua Tagovailoa. And we talked a little bit about the Dolphins and their quarterback situation, but musical chairs here, man. Where do you think, if anywhere, Tua's going to end up?
Yeah, I think Tua is a guy that Arizona, if they miss out on Malik Willis and, want someone who's on the younger side, but also a veteran, could work out. But the fit that I really like is in Atlanta with Michael Penix. And no, it's not just because they're both left-handed quarterbacks. It's just, I think Michael Penix with the injury history he has, Tua Tagovailoa with the injury history he has, if you have both of those guys in the same room, if one of them gets banged up, the other will get the opportunity. And I just think with Penix, coming off the torn ACL, we don't know what he's going to do. Kevin Stefanski and the team seem high enough on him, but you want someone behind him and someone who's experienced that if he's not ready to start the season, you could throw out there and say, hey, we'll still have a chance to win the NFC South, which is routinely the worst division in football. I mean, the Panthers won it with a losing record last year. So, I mean, Tua can certainly hold the fort. And with all the weapons and the good offensive line the Falcons have, I think it's a great fit. So, unless he lands a starting job somewhere, Atlanta is the team that I'm really looking at and saying, hey, this could end up being the perfect spot for him as he looks to rebuild his value.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Jacob. And again, because so much of that fit is surrounded by what Stefanski's going to do with the weapons on offense, right? Kyle Pitts has been franchise tag. You look at Drake London is ascending into one of the game's elite receivers if he's not there already. Bijan Robinson is a workhorse back. We'll see if Stefanski is going to be able to use him better than the last regime did there. And if anything we know about Tua is that he does need that supporting cast, right? Like he's not a guy who's going to be a Mahomes or a Josh Allen and really put the team on his back. He's going to need guys that can help elevate his game. So I like it. I like it a lot. And Ayrton, enough about the quarterbacks, brother. We talk a lot about the quarterbacks. You know, free agency is around the corner, but what are you most looking forward to in free agency?
I look around, I'm looking at the trenches because we just saw Seattle work their way to the Super Bowl title on the back of that defense. And it wasn't a star-studded as far as, 20 sack or 15 sack guys up front. It was with a deep crew of guys up front. So when we look at teams looking to emulate that, is it something where they look to free agency to build those out? So there's a lot of fascinating options. One guy I really have my eye on is Jalen Phillips, just because former first round picks with his size, his tools, don't usually hit the open market at his age. He's only 26 years old. He's one of the younger guys hitting free agency. Because of how he looked at the tail end after getting acquired by Philadelphia at the trade deadline, does he get something close to 20 million per year? Are teams willing to give him that much? And if he's that option there as one of the younger guys, what does a veteran like Khalil Mack get? What does that look like, and what are teams looking for with their money? Are they going to go after more veterans like Mack or Trey Hendrickson? Or does Phillips become, even though he has less production, he has a bit of a questionable injury history, but just because of the age in his tools, does he get a lot of money? On the other side, center is such a fickle position to look forward to in the draft because a lot of teams just want a veteran snapping the ball to their quarterback. Well, there's a Pro Bowl center that's hitting free agency, Tyler Linderbaum, that reportedly turned down record-setting money from the Ravens before he's going to hit the open market. Could he get a record-setting deal that puts Creed Humphrey's contract down the list a little bit? But he's not the only center on the free agent market that's available that has a proven track record. You could look at Connor McGovern or Cade Mays. They're a little bit older, but still, you could save $8 million per year. That could give you enough money to sign another depth piece elsewhere, while still providing you a center that you can rely on, especially with the quarterback landscape changing as much as we anticipate it might this offseason. Center could play a huge role.
Well, let's talk about that, Jacob. Like, why would the Ravens decline? Listen, you're a trenches guy. This seemed to get you a little riled up. So tell me why. Give me your thoughts on the Ravens declining Tyler Linderbaum's fifth-year option.
Yeah, it made no sense when they did that last year. It sounded like at the time they were, reserving some money to maybe extend Lamar Jackson or do something else with the team to try to build it up. But it never made sense because Tyler Linderbaum's a known quantity at center. He's been one of the best in the league since he was a first round pick out of Iowa. And look, the last 4 years, he is graded as one of Pro Football Focus's top 7 centers every single time. He's consistent. He does everything well. And it just didn't make any sense. Their interior offensive line was an issue last year, too, at the guard spots. So now, if you don't win the bidding war for Linderbaum, which will almost certainly end in him being the highest paid center in the NFL in terms of average annual value, now you're going to be looking to replace your entire interior offensive line in front of Lamar Jackson, and Ronnie Stanley isn't getting any younger. So they've got a big issue in Baltimore if they can't retain Linderbaum or if they can't, find a way to acquire some other offensive linemen. So that decision made no sense to me. And I'm interested to see if they don't retain him, how they're going to justify not picking up that option, especially if he gets an AAV that's much higher than what that option would have been worth.
Yeah, and listen, man, you're talking a lot about free agency and cap space now, right? Ravens seemingly made a confusing cap space decision there when it came to Linderbaum, but hey, man, there's other teams who are going to be looking to spend a lot of money this offseason. And Jacob, I want your thoughts here. I need to know who is the team that needs to spend the money this offseason. They need to make splash. They need to go all in. We know that the Jets are near the top of that list. The Raiders are there. The Titans lead the league in cap space. I need to know, though, who is the team, in your estimation, that needs to really hit free agency hard and spend a lot of money?
I'm going to give you 2 because I'm incapable of picking one, but I think the Raiders are a great example number 2 in the league in cap space, and they need to build around Fernando Mendoza, who's almost certainly going to be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. I know never speaking absolutes in the NFL, but 99.99% chance that happens. So they really need to build up the offense around him. The offensive line last year was atrocious. And, you have Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers at running back and tight end, which is nice, but they have next to nothing at receiver. They have a lot of young talents like Jack Besh and Dante Thornton Jr., I believe, is on the team there. So I think that you can, sell me on some of those guys developing, but you still need some veteran receivers to help them out. Clint Kubiak's coming over from Seattle, and there's a lot of Seahawks free agents that are out there. Reek Woolen, Josh Jobe, Boye Mafe on the defensive side, and of course Rashid Shaheed, who has enjoyed his best NFL seasons under Kubiak's tutelage. So that could be an ideal fit at receiver. The other team I'd keep an eye on is the Commanders. I know that they're coming off of a bad year, but we saw them go all the way to the NFC Championship game the year before. That was maybe, I don't want to call it a fluke, but kind of a lot went right for them there. They need to get younger and faster at pretty much all levels of the team, but this is their kind of opportunity to build around Jaden Daniels while he's still on that rookie contract. I think, seeking out some of those younger defensive options like Jalen Phillips, who Ayrton mentioned earlier in this podcast, to, man that edge position that was a problem for them last year. Quay Walker is a young athletic linebacker from the Packers who's been very productive across his 4 years. I think you look at those kind of guys and say, hey, if they could add like a very high-end athlete at each level of the defense, that would go a long way towards helping them. And I think they're going to spend big just trying to say, hey, we got like 3 years to capitalize on Jaden Daniels before we have to pay him $250+ million. So I think this is their year to do it because, hey, they got the 5th most cap space in the league, I think over $70 million. So good opportunity for them.
Yep, Ayrton, Jacob is spending a lot of people's money, but how would you spend a lot of teams' money here, man? Like, we talked about the Raiders, we talked about the Commanders. In Jacob's estimation, should be 2 teams that should go out and hit free agency hard. But what does Ayrton Ostly think? I'm curious of your thoughts on free agency.
I think if you've got the money, you got to try to be smart with how you spend it. I wouldn't overextend yourself. When you're looking at somebody like the Commanders, a team like that, I'd say overall the defense is one of the oldest units in the league. Free agency isn't going to help a ton with getting younger because oftentimes these are all veterans. They're all on their second, third contracts. So instead, maybe utilizing that cap space for depth pieces. That way you're not in a situation where you're relying on the draft in every single spot that you have a need, where it's like, all right, even if this doesn't pan out, we've got an option here. So I'd say identify what marquee free agents really there are. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of big name ones this time around, just because the biggest names are off the board. To see George Pickens getting tagged, Kyle Pitts getting tagged. So a lot of those stars that could potentially really lift your ceiling of the options that are there aren't going to be available. So I'd say look more for depth and just making sure your floor is higher rather than chasing a high ceiling.
Let me tell you something. If I ever meet the inventor of the franchise tag, it's on site. They take so much fun away from us, man. And you know what? It stinks for the players too, right? Because you're a young guy, and I'm thinking about Breece Hall in this situation, right? Where we know running backs, I say it all the time, running backs don't matter. I mean, they do. When you have a good one, it matters, right? Like it means a lot for an offense. So have an opportunity to still have fresh legs, not a lot of mileage there, and hit free agency and find a spot where you can stick and get paid, but instead you're getting slapped with this thing and you're stuck in a tough situation that maybe you don't want to be a part of, right? And you see guys like George Pickens getting franchise tag, like you said, Ayrton. And listen, Pickens is a great fit in Dallas, don't get me wrong, but what would it have looked like if he hit free agency this season? Like, who would have been interested? Like that, those kinds of questions, they rob us. They rob us of fun. So, man, whoever invented the franchise tag, it's on, baby. I'll find you. I have a very specific set of skills. Anyway, Ayrton, Jacob talked about the Commanders and talked about the Raiders as teams who should spend a lot of money. Who, in your estimation, should hit free agency with their wallets? They should hit it hard.
I'm gonna keep in the NFC from what Jacob said with the Commanders, and I'm gonna say the Los Angeles Rams, just because you get that close. You look at what the Rams did in the playoffs. They gave the Seahawks more of a test than anybody else did. If I'm listening, I'm looking around going, hey, this is so close to a potential title winning roster. You have Matthew Stafford in the twilight of his career, but just came off an MVP season. how could you push with this one more year just before that young defense? Everybody's talking about how young and expensive it is and how incredible they are producing at such a high level. They're going to get expensive. Those players are going to need extensions. So in this final year, 2026, before a lot of those contract decisions have to be made, do we see them make a push?
All right, guys, before we go, I gotta listen. There's an old friend that we need to say hi to, and his name is Big Take Jake. Now, Big Take Jake, you've been gone for a while, partner. People are curious, though. Where are the takes, Jake? Are you small take Jake now? People need to know, partner. Give us your biggest, hottest, fieriest, boldest free agency prediction, partner. Big Take Jake, it's all on you, pal.
All right, partner. Here we go with free agency. There's going to be money flying around like crazy. The NFL's going to be spending out their behinds to kind of wrap up some of these old school rootin' tootin' Cowboys to bolster their rosters. Now, I am going to come in with a bolder prediction that ain't necessarily related to the actual signing of players, but I'm going to be calling on Derek Carr come out of retirement and suit up for the Minnesota Vikings and say to myself, hey, you got J.J. McCarthy, but you're going to need a little bit of that veteran, old school type of cowboy at quarterback. Derek Carr could provide you that. And I'm saying, if they're not going to go after Kyler Murray, if they're not going to go get Tua Tagovailoa, if they're not going to go get Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, you are a Minnesota Viking.